Welcome to an Introduction to Video Games Creation, Module 13, Introduction to AI, Artificial Intelligence for Games. We're going to look at the AI in some classic games and see what lessons they have for us today. So, why is artificial intelligence such a fascinating topic? And it is something that has fascinated humans for centuries. Look at the classic myth of the golem, where an inanimate object is brought to life through magic. Look at Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Fritz Lang's Metropolis. Fiction is full of attempts to bring life to inanimate objects and to recreate the moment of life being created. And now, as we make our own strides in computing and artificial intelligence in the real world, you can see that contemporary fiction and films and media tends to be generally fascinated with the threat that AI becoming sentient, self-aware, poses to the human race. And here are some classic examples listed out that I'm sure you're really all aware of. And beyond things that were purely within the realms of science fiction a few decades ago, like HAL from 2001, technology companies are quickly bringing some of these things to life and putting them in your living room. And why are they doing that? Because we're in the middle of a second industrial technology revolution, and the opportunities around that are massive. But beyond those opportunities, I think when we look at AI and we look at creating these things in fiction and in reality, it makes us ask questions about the nature of our own sentience, the nature of our own consciousness, what it is to be human. But this introduction module is not about the quest for sentience. It's not about the industrial or moral implications of AI in the real world. This is purely about making great game experiences. So we're going to look at three major elements in these videos. The first is artificial intelligence as an end in itself, such as in the game of life. The second is the creation, the production of convincing NPCs, non-player characters. And thirdly, and something that is often overlooked, the engineering of the overall game experience, i.e. the kind of role of the designer in creating that sense of an intelligent force within the game. So one of the most important rules for games AI is the appearance of intelligence. The AI element, the NPC, the game itself, must appear to be acting in a logical cause and effect manner, irrespective of what is actually happening within the underlying code. If the game elements appear to be behaving rationally within their momentary existence in the game, the viewer will often fill in the rest. And I've worked on many prototypes and many games where the AI had to be reduced in complexity to add clarity to the game world, because it's all about cause and effect and signaling clearly intent to the player. You could have the most complex AI brain within your game, but if that brain does not communicate clearly to the player the state it's in, then the player has no awareness of all of that code going on in the background. So let's look at our first case study, and that study is going to be Conway's The Game of Life. The Game of Life was created by John Horton Conway in 1970. It's probably the most famous example of a cellular automata, and it's also an example of a zero-player game. Once you set the initial state, it doesn't require any further player input. Conway was a mathematician who studied in Cambridge in the UK and Princeton in the US. And he was very interested in games and how maths can be applied to them. And as well as the Game of Life, he's made several other games that you can look at, such as Sprouts, for example. And he actually kind of grew tired of the Game of Life and the continued interest around it throughout his life, as he felt it overshadowed some of his other mathematical accomplishments. And some of those accomplishments are beyond my understanding of maths, but I'm going to provide some links in the slides for you to follow up on if you are interested. You can see here some of them look pretty at the very least. So let's go through the game and its rules. So the game is set on a 2D grid of cells of variable x and y dimensions, and each cell can either be alive or dead, and it interacts with all the cells that are directly adjacent to it. And just to be very clear, there are all the adjacent cells next to our red cell in the middle. So what are the rules? The first rule is simple. Any live cell with fewer than 2 live neighbours dies, as if by loneliness. So there are 8 neighbouring cells. If there's less than 2 that are alive, the middle cell will die. And again, to be clear, in this diagram, black is a cell. So you should already be able to see that in the next turn of the game, every cell within the grid is lonely and our cell colony dies. The second rule is any live cell with more than 3 live neighbours dies, as if by overcrowding. So you can't be too lonely, you can't be too overcrowded. So here are all our overcrowded cells that will die in the next round. But remember rule 1 as well, there's some cells here that will die of loneliness. So in the next round or the next generation, our cell colony will look like this. So let's run our paper simulation of the game of life. And with those 2 rules, in 3 generations, every cell dies out, apart from the 3 at the bottom of the grid, which, because each cell has 2 neighbours, they stay consistently alive. And this in the game of life is known as a still life, and we'll come to that in more detail later. But there are 2 more rules, and the third rule is any live cell with 2 or 3 neighbours lives unchanged to the next generation, and there they all are. And if we run the simulation again, we get exactly the same result, because at the minute these cells are living in a pretty tough universe. But there's a 4th and final rule. Any dead cell with exactly 3 live neighbours comes to life or is born, and you can see our 4 happy little cells following this rule here. So with all 4 rules in place, let's run the simulation again. And it's important to know I've kept the cell birth and death notation in. And it's also important to note that the 4 rules run in the same instant, and each cell's fate is decided within that instance. They don't run in a set order. And when we run the simulation, we last longer. We last 5 generations, but the colony still dies out. It's still a tough universe because I picked those cell positions at random, so they didn't fare very well. Now let's run the simulation without notation. And I found this interesting. The first time I ran the simulation, and I'm just doing it, with pen and paper on the slides, I made a mistake on one of the slides and I marked them with the purple cells. And you can see the radically different outcome with just one kind of random set of mutations within the cell, if you like, where ones that died didn't actually die for 1 round. Let's run it again without notation. And we end up with a different still life somewhere else on the grid. So what does this clearly show us? It shows us that great complexity can arise from a very simple rule set. And why have I run these initial rules with a pen and paper simulation? Well, 1, it makes it easy to explain, and 2, Conway himself devised the game on pen and paper rather than on a computer. So let's look at some of the different types of cell colony that you can have in the game of life. The first, the ones we've already mentioned, still lives. A still life is a stable colony of cells that will not change with subsequent generations. And they've been given set names: the block, the tub, the beehive, the boat, the loaf. I didn't name these. And if we apply the game rules to them, you can clearly see why they are stable. The numbers in the discs indicating how many cells are adjacent to each other. A second type is oscillators, and these are cell colonies that move between states and return to their initial state over a number of generations. And if we apply the rules to this very simple 3 colony cell system, you can see how it oscillates between the 2 states over 2 generations. And here's some other cell colonies that do exactly the same thing. And here are those cell colonies in a version of the game that you can download for free off the Microsoft Store. And here's a more complex one, a pulsar. And this is an oscillator which is a period 3 oscillator, meaning it takes 3 generations before it wraps around upon itself again. And this cell colony is called a pentadecathlon, and this is a 15 period oscillator, and we can see it run now. And I'm going to stop that and go through that frame by frame. The next type is even more interesting. These are called spaceships, and when I run this colony called a glider, you'll clearly see why. And now I'm going to draw in another colony. This is known as the heavyweight spaceship. And let's run that, and you can see we're starting to see what we talked about earlier on. From this simple rule set, great complexity can emerge. For example, this is the Gosper glider gun, and it's an oscillator that, as it goes through its cycle, fires out a glider, and it will do that infinitely. And this 8-cell colony is a switch engine, and this is really one of my favorites. It's 8 cells, and when you run the simulation, you'll see what happens. It explodes out, leaving behind colonies of still lifes and oscillators, all the categories of patterns. Let's have a look at the switch engine we've just seen. And here, they've got their own game of life you can launch. It's got an incredible amount of options and variables you can play with. I'm selecting the theme that shows the kind of generations of the cells. And then I've made it auto fit into the window, and let's play again. And you can see with no grid boundaries how it infinitely grows out. And if I pause that, zoom right in, we can see some of the still lives and some of the oscillators that have been left behind in the wake of the kind of main cell colony. And remember, all of this just came from 8 tiny individual cells. Another similar cell generator. Let's look at an arc. So I'll select that. Yes, we're going to select the Noah's Ark. And again, it's very, very tiny number of initial cells. So I'm going to launch it. Select a theme. Go for life history. Make sure we frame the whole growth. Off we go. And again, it's leaving behind still lives, but then eating them up again, pushing out, creating gliders. And just infinitely expanding. And this will clearly show that from a very simple rule set, almost infinite complexity can emerge. I'll include some links if you'd like to find out more. And in the next video, we'll be looking at Robotron 2084.